Yo, welcome to Crate 808, and today we have a very special guest on board. Actor and NCIS legend, Sean Murray, is in the house. How are you doing, Sean?
Legend. How about that? Wow. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Mate, not my words, the words of the internet, my friend. That is the words.
Are you sure I didn't write that down?
It could have been your burner account. It could have been your burner
account.
It
could have been myself, yeah.
But yeah, man, thank you for coming on.
Hey, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time. We talked about a few albums via email and what we wanted to talk about, and we landed on one that is very close to my heart. I'm sure it's close to your heart. So today we're going to be chopping it up over DJ Shadow's incredible 1996 album, Endtroducing. Yes.
Oh,
I can't.
Like a whole beautiful world to explore.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
It means so much to me.
Brilliant. So this is what I'm talking about. If actually, before we jump in, I have to ask you, I ask every guest who comes on, Sean, what's the least hip hop thing you've done in the last 24 hours?
The least hip hop thing I've done in the last 24 hours was watch Gilmore Girls with my daughter.
That is a level.
I think that's pretty good, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, 100%.
That's pretty like as little hip hop as possible.
Yeah, that's right in that corner. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm wondering, is it more hip hop or less if you watched it on your own, though? If you're watching it in store?
Yeah, you know what? I think I think the kind of the family aspect of it kind of sells it a little bit. It makes it all right a little bit. If I was watching it on my own, that might be a little dark. Yeah, I'm with you.
A little dark. I love that. So man, yeah, DJ Shadow, Endtroducing, absolute classic. I really wanted to just ask you your origins with the record, really, like how you came across it. Had you heard anything like this before you even dived in?
You know, I grew. It's funny because I grew up on I have an eclectic taste. You know, I listen to all kinds of genres of music, and you know, like a lot of people, I grew up with family members that played in music. You know, I had a cousin who played in a death metal band when I was like in elementary school, and I used to hang out with him and listen to records and all this. But you know, so I started with heavy metal and rock, and then got into classic rock, and then I got really into the electronic music that was coming out of England and surrounding England, especially the IDM scene, the brain dance scene that, you know, pretty much was kind of started by Aphex Twin and Black Dog and Plaid and those guys.
Yeah.
You know, and Oddtecker a little bit. I got real heavy into electronic music.
Okay.
Aphex Twin is like a musical hero of mine.
Okay.
I mean, that dude is I mean, talk about worlds and personality, like, oh my goodness. Yeah. But anyway, through the my love of electronic music, you know, and as you know, when you're a music lover, you're always like looking to find something. You're looking for more content from someone else, you know, that's got something that you'll like or whatever. And I came upon, I don't remember exactly how I came upon the album, but it was like a sleeper. Like I got it, and I do remember that I had the album and I had no hype around it. I didn't know anything about the album, but it had been recommended to me through electronic circles, kind of on a more of an ambient sort of tip, even though it's, you know, as you know, that album is all about samples pulled. It's about crate digging and all these samples and these bits and these melodies and textures that were pulled from all these different sources and made into this hip hop instrumental, you know, record. I mean, hip hop in the way that the beats and the break beats come, you know, it's kind of classic hip hop, but it kind of achieves something a little different. You know, it's not like, you know, you don't think of like the classic sort of like a Paul's Boutique kind of, you know, like more instrumental hip hop sort of thing. This is like a lot of people at the time were calling it trip hop. You know, because that was kind of a trendy, you know, term at the time. And I think it was just kind of psychedelic hip hop on a little slower. And, you know, it's like, I mean, it's instrumental. So there's not a lot of rap, you know, you have vocal samples throughout. But I think you know, the little bit of vocals that are on the album are kind of these really odd samples that are taken from different places. And I think if you had anything straight, like a straight rapper, like going at it on a track or something, it would not be that album. It couldn't be that album. That album could not exist with a proper MC.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. What you've said there about the art of sampling, and on this pod, obviously, we it's 90s podcast. The sampling was at the heyday, late 80s, going into the early 90s.
Yeah.
There was so much love for that scene. And after what happened to De La Soul and all that, obviously sampling became a bit more of a restricted art form. And
right.
It's a beautiful.
But I mean, it's like the kind of talk of what you're talking about. I was recently read this article that talked about the Grey album, you know, the mashup that happened with the Beatles and Jay-Z's Black album by, I think it was Danger Mouse, did that right?
Yeah.
And they talked about how that album just would never even happen nowadays. It could never exist because no one would even start. They would know you can't sample the Beatles. I get sued 10 ways from Sunday.
Yeah.
And they would never even approach it. So whether it's legal or not, you know, as far as that, you know, and those clearances and stuff, you wouldn't have had that kind of creative output, that kind of mashup, that kind of, no one would even have approached that in the first place with the kind of rules you have nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, you had that environment where people could sample from all these things and like create these amazing things.
Absolutely. And even in Shadow's time when he's dropped this, I mean, his first is 93, then it's like this 96, and then going into 98. That sampling was still around, but I do think there were more and more issues happening around that time. So even then, he was going in. And you know what? One thing I love, and thank you for bringing this album back into my rotation, because it's just a classic. And I don't really hear it too much nowadays. I just don't. And going back, it was like a time machine, bro. And it was like, I just could smell the air from
I hear you, man.
Time.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
So where were you then at that time? Where were you?
Oh man, that was like, you know, that was my early like rave days, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? I was going to a lot of shows those days. I was going to a lot of parties out in the desert, listening to a lot of good music.
Damn, you know? Out in the desert.
Seeing so much good. I mean, that's the days, you know, when you're like a teenager and you know, I'd finished school and, you know, I had a little bit of money and I had some free time, which is, you know, a great combination when you're going to go look for some music, you know? So, but it's funny, you know, I have certain albums in my life that very much are like a time capsule of a certain period or whatnot, you know. Endtroducing, I have visited so many times over the years since 96 that to me, it's like it's been a creature that's always been alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Were you one of them? Actually, before we go, were you one of them fans? Because DJ Shadow fans, I find there's certain camps and cliques of Shadow fans, or generally of Cuba and all these scratching DJs. It can go, it's a whole new world of hip hop. But before we do, you were talking there about desert, parties in the desert, and my mind went straight to Kyuss. Who are hip hop.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, did you ever get to see Kyuss in a desert? Because
I saw Kyuss in the desert.
Jesus Christ. Okay, well, that's it. You're now already a hero of mine.
Oh, well, thank you, man. Thank you. I did. I saw one time Kyuss in the desert.
Damn. Okay.
And so remember it.
Hip hop heads, if you don't know who Kyuss are, go check them out because they're incredible. But anyway, that was a sidestep. On what we were saying there about the sampling, by the way, what I wanted to say was what I love about this album, and listening back to it now, you can tell just the way it's meticulously, it's to be a genius. I feel you need obviously talent, but you need hard work, persistence, and discipline. As in, he's a hip hop head. He knows what hip hop is. And to completely dismiss one pillar of rap, which is rapping.
Right.
And then the heart and soul he puts into how long he must have been there to find all the bits. And
from what I understand, he had pretty minimal equipment. And from what I understand, he had a little sampler, and he just collected recordings on this for like over 2.5 years just for the introducing material.
That's crazy.
And he had very minimal. I think like he made the thing with like a mixing board and 3 pieces of equipment. You know what I mean? If I knew my equipment better, I could tell you.
But man, that in itself makes it just like a love letter to hip hop, but just with his blood and guts and sweat. It's like a love letter to sampling, even. Like, you know, it is like this art form that I'm not sure where you were coming from with sampling, but I remember when I was a kid and hearing detractors of rap around me everywhere. One of the things were like, oh, they'll just get a record and what? You're not even producing it. You're just going to, but this record shows, I feel it's a transformative art form. It's not just, here's a record, I want to cut it up. show people DJ Shadow and they'll go, then you'll realize, that it's full of heart, soul, and, a whole new art form. So yeah,
I totally agree. He's taken all these layers. He's taken all these pieces. He's put them together. He's made them into things that they never were never even quite meant to be. I mean, there's a great track called Stem Long Stem on the album. And it's got you can hear kind of echoing or reverbing in the back, the vocals of what is actually a comedian named, I think his name is Murray Roman,
right,
telling a story about parking tickets and having warrants out for his arrest. And it's taken completely out of context and it's thrown in there, and it works completely for the texture of the song, and everything about it works completely. Knowing where it came from and how it ended up there is like ridiculous. And I have no idea why you would go, you know what, this vocal sample of this guy telling this joke, I think would work really well with this sort of gothic, violin line or whatever, And, it's funny. I know I used the word gothic. I find the introducing to have a lot of kind of gothic vibe to it. I think maybe because a lot of piano is used, so much piano is sampled.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really just gorgeous little melodies, piano, So I get a gothic vibe. It's definitely a dark album.
Yeah, 100% is. I mean, there are.
But at the same time, it's got that at the same time, it's super uplifting. You've got, Midnight in a Perfect World.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is a beautiful thing where you don't need any writers or commentators or gatekeepers to tell you that in the trip hop scene, that is a Portishead track or a Massive Attack track. Like, these things I think are almost interchangeable, and that's to take hip hop. Like, when I was a kid, when I heard this, I didn't even know if I liked it when I first heard it.
Sure.
I was like, this is
a lot of the stuff that I end up liking the most when I first hear. I'm kind of like, what is that? I don't know. What is that?
Yeah, and isn't that beautiful? It's like they always give you. I love it when an artist gives his or hers audience like a lot of respect and be like, just stick with me. I'll hold your hand.
Let it digest. Let it, vibe on it a little.
Yeah. And do you know what? Actually, on that, I don't know if there's a word for that, but on that, the legacy and spawning of talent from this record, as well as lots of other records, as you said, Aphex was doing his thing. There's so many people doing ridiculous things with Sonics at the time. I even think Metallica had some album tracks that were like, what is going on here? I can't remember exactly what, but there were metal tracks where I was like, this is a bit weird. But to take hip hop, it's such a rigid, like, when I say rigid, I mean the beautiful, like, it was us against them as a hip hop.
Right. There were kind of pretty drawn lines as far as what the format was and how exactly. I hear what you're saying.
And to take it from that and just go, actually, guess what else it can be, guys? Bang, it's this as well. So yeah, absolutely love that. So going back to what I was going to say then, as a DJ Shadow fan, and are you one of them fans that when Introducing was out for 3 or 4 years, did you want to hear more and more Introducing, or did you enjoy where he went with his other work?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I was one of the fans that was Introducing was on such a high point. It was like, to me, he could never get close to that ever again.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he didn't make good music, because he made some incredible, I mean, I think it's Blood on the Motorways. There's some wonderful moments, like on, I think, Preemptive Strike and some other things. Yeah, he's got some really nice stuff out there, and he has achieved, I think, moments that similar to Introducing. But to me, Introducing is just sort of like the pinnacle. It's like, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, it was just all spent there almost. And I hate to say that because he's an artist, you know what I mean? And I don't like to pigeonhole and say, oh, you can only do the one thing, because I've heard him do plenty of stuff that's amazing, but Introducing is just such a special record.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I'm actually going to ask you, did you ever get to see, there's a doc called Scratch, specifically about...
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. There's so many good music documentaries.
There really are. And although like DJ scratching isn't like my go-to, like I probably wouldn't go out my way to buy tickets to see it, I do fully respect it. And I'll tell you what, if you ever get like a spare hour and you just want to delve into that world, this video, it's actually on YouTube now, and I rewatched it, and there's
like
one
turntablism and the art of it, kind of. And
yeah, all that,
right
absolutely. And DJ Shadow's in it. And
cool.
he has this, it's just fascinating to see that world where DJ Shadow is in Cubert's, who's like a bit of a legend in the DJing scene.
Oh, yeah.
His kitchen, and they're both just almost like jamming, but scratching. And then the camera cuts, and Madlib's just sitting there, laughing his head off. Like, he's just sitting there like, oh my God.
That's awesome.
And I was
like, Dan the Automator in the corner too?
Do you know what? He probably was. He probably was. He probably was. So what I loved is that scene, but there's one moment he's he's talking about sampling and this record and, you know, his art form. And he says something which really hit home when you said earlier about like the comedy sketch and where that has come from and the journey it's taken to get onto this record. He was like, there's this really old man and woman, and he would go to the record store every day, and he was like, they always say, if you like it up here, you should see what we've got downstairs. And he took him like a few years. He got downstairs, and he said he'd spend all day there, and it's just filled to the rafters of records.
See, now I think I've heard this story.
Right.
I've heard the story in an article or something recounted. Yeah.
Okay. So it's in this doc.
As far as him getting access into like the vaults.
Yeah.
As far as the vinyl.
Yeah, absolutely. He was like, and then he says something brilliant where I was like, oh my God, that is absolutely true. If you treat this music the way he sees it, he was like, if you actually think about it, these are just piles of broken dreams of like artists who thought they'd be number one, and look where you've ended up. And you got to remember, you could always end up in the same place they are. And it's almost like this Introducing's built of broken dreams. And it's,
you know what? I've never thought about that, but you're absolutely correct.
That's what he said. That's his words. And
that's okay. I've never thought about that, but that's Man, that's definitely an angle on it, and kind of an interesting one.
And that's what makes it sound dark as well, and kind of full of soul and heart, and it's just really weird. I found that.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yo, just interrupting this episode to give you a quick update on our plans for 2021. But before I do, just remember to subscribe on YouTube and like this video. Also, get involved in the comments. We always have some dope takes on there, so shout out to people that are getting involved. We love reading them, and hopefully some more of you guys can get on there, and we'll shout you out on the episodes coming up. Now, on to 2021. We here at Crate 808 are setting up a Patreon where for the price of a pint or a coffee every month, we'll be bringing you even more dope hip-hop episodes. Simply go to crate808.com, subscribe to the newsletter, you'll get all the updates on our plans, but as a taster, each month we're thinking of bringing you 90s rap hidden gem album reviews that you can vote for. So if you enjoy people like Master Ace, Diamond D, The Lynch Mob, Paris, Big Noid, Blase, we'll be doing a lot more of those. We're going to do our Why I Love series, the MF Doom and J Dilla editions. Each month we'll bring on a guest and dig into why they love a certain Doom or JD track, and then test that love. How deep is that love? So expect some nostalgia right there. Next up, Wu-Tang Chronicles, Ghostface Killer Edition. We're aiming here, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but we're aiming to go through every solo Wu project, and we're going to start with Ghostface catalogue. So we're going to go in, we're going to talk about the music, we're going to talk about the fashion sense, and just some of the amazing bars he's dropped in that career. So you can expect that as well. And then for every patron who comes on, get your name on the credits, the Crate 808 credits, and in our Hall of Fame. So that'll be, I don't know how that's going to look right now, but we're going to give each of you a little bit of shine and a shout out on the show. And the Griselda Marathon, I want to do it. If we get enough patrons, we're going to do it. We're going to go through every single Griselda project and really let's dive in, yeah? So get involved. Hit up crate808.com, subscribe to the newsletter, as well as the YouTube and the podcast. Now, back to the episode.
I mean, there's so much soul in the album. It's ridiculous. I mean, hell, the EP, What Does Your Soul Look Like, came out of that, came out of those sessions, which is, anyone that doesn't know the EP, What Does Your Soul Look Like, 4 parts, unbelievable. I think two of those tracks are on the Introducing album.
Yeah.
By the way, before I forget, because I just want to bring it up at some point, since we're talking about sampling and stuff, one of the greatest samples ever is at the very end of Introducing.
Okay.
Do you know which one I'm talking about?
So you're thinking, which track is that? That's What Does Your Soul Look Like?
It's the last track. It's the last thing you hear on the record. You hear a skipping record, and then you hear the start of a laugh. And what that moment is the very moment in Twin Peaks when the audience learned who killed Laura Palmer.
Oh,
For Twin Peaks heads, they'll know exactly what that means.
Man,
it's a tiny little subtle moment, but it's when the audience learned it, and that's where the record ends. It's very subtle and it's awesome.
How beautiful! That is amazing. So I haven't watched Twin Peaks. I know people hate me for this, and I do love. I've watched the first series. I enjoy it, but that is incredible. I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yeah,
so yeah.
He's get there's actually I think 2 or 3 samples from Twin Peaks, audio samples. Right. Used through them. One is of the giant saying "It is happening again," I think, or something is happening, something. And but the one of the record skipping and the little laugh you start to hear at the very end of the record before it cuts out. Ooh, chills. Ooh, good stuff.
Oh, that's brilliant. I've got to go listen to that now. I've got to go listen to it. But it sounds like he's a Lynch fan, a Lynchian, as you would.
Oh, I think so. And just that. I mean, that kind of style, I mean, is very kind of murky, surreal, dark. So I'd be really kind of surprised if he wasn't into some surreal artists, like David Lynch and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So on that then, we have sections that we like to talk about on the pod for the albums. And you were saying there about that moment being and that feels like a very rewindable moment. So are there any other moments on this album where you would just be like, oh, I kind of just can rewind that forever?
When I'll tell you, and I know you know this moment, when in Midnight in a Perfect World, there's that buildup. And when that breakbeat finally is just let loose, that slow boom, big breakbeat with all that reverb is let, mama, midnight, and now we're approaching midnight. And it just goes. That is, when that breakbeat is just let to sit in all that beauty and all that air, it's just so pretty. So pretty. Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm not even listening to it and I'm getting goosebumps.
But that's it. That's the power, man. That's the power. I love
it. And then you've got like Organ Donor, that great organ number that just, there's not a single person that you can play that song for who's not like, I love this track. I love this track.
Yeah.
It's like, even if they don't like hip hop, instrumental, electronic, anything, like they're just like, this is good.
Yeah. And it gives me a renowned love for organs. Like I don't really listen to a lot of organs. I love Godspeed You Black Emperor. I like all these kind of noises. Right. I don't hear a lot of organs, and I was like, Organ Donor makes you feel like that's the best instrument ever. It's like
totally. That's funny because one of my favorites, Aphex Twin, started a collection of organs, and there was a lot of organs that started appearing on a couple of his albums. But anyway,
Have you ever seen Aphex live? By the way,
you know what? I actually saw Aphex live in like '95 or '96 in the States. I think it was '95. And it was at a rave, and it was a small rave. And as you probably know, Aphex Twin has come to the United States, I think, twice in his career. And he left for like 20 years. He wasn't doing anything. And at least not performing in the States. And so, but I got to see him at a small rave in '95 in the scene, like in the Real Deal kind of scene. And then I saw him years later do a DJ set at Coachella.
Oh, wow.
Which was a very different kind of scene.
Yeah, wow, that is odd. Yeah, because I hear the stories of his live shows and they just sound incredible.
The first time the dancing bears, when you see dancing bears on stage, these big dancing furry bears that have his maniacal face pasted on them, and he basically and by the way, when he performs, sorry to get into this, but
no, absolutely.
By the way, when he performs, he like sits on stage like with a mixing board or like lays down like he's in his living room just playing video games or something. It's kind of crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. And then you got these dancing bears, and he's basically trying to make it as loud and abrasive as possible. He's trying to drive the crowd into insanity.
Brilliant.
Anyway, that's my Aphex.
I love that. It sounds a lot like Swans. They I don't know if you've ever heard Swans, but when you go see those live, they don't almost like they don't want you there. It's almost like, can you get out the room? But yeah,
there's a famous old Aphex story about him going into a club and putting on a piece of sandpaper on the needle.
Yes,
but I'm sure that's some story, but it's a good one.
I hope it's true. I wanted to believe it's true. Exactly. But yeah, Organ Donor, absolutely loved that. I think it was extended as a B-side. I heard that again, and it's just one of them you can let run. It's just a track you can just let run. Absolutely.
Yeah. Totally. And there's that where the beat stops and it just runs. And the organ keeps going for forever, and you're waiting for it to come back in, and then it drops. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
He's so good with that tension and that really when to drop the beat and when not to is so right on, like throughout that album.
Yeah, really good point. Because you know what? We have like 5 mic moments, which are like moments of near perfection on the album. And I had long stem, long stem on there. And I was like, obviously the bells, the strings, all about it. It's kind of transcendental as well. But I think that is a moment when you think, right, this is an era almost, but I suppose like Midnight is like that as well. Like it feels like he's bottled a whole era of music, and that's what makes me go back in time with him. And I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I hear you. There's a thing I was thinking about this earlier too, because I was playing it a couple hours ago, just thinking about it, and you know, Shadow on that album. There's this feeling of like. It's very future. It's got a lot of future to it, but it's so nostalgic. It's got all this nostalgia in it, all this warmth and this comfort and nostalgia. You know what I mean? Like, so it kind of hits both of those things, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah. Because I'm not sure if I feel entirely happy after listening to the album. Like, I feel just very kind of want to hug. You know, it's like afterwards, you kind of want to hug.
A little spent. You've been through something for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. It's kind of like finishing. It's kind of like finishing a Lynch movie that's open ended, and you're like, oh, I dug it, but I'm slightly uncomfortable. I need a hug.
Yeah.
So
Mulholland Drive. Everybody needs a hug at the end of that. Everybody does.
One of my favorites.
Man, beautiful. But on that, you know, you were saying there about like rewindable moments. I had one that I just wanted to say to you because again, thank you for letting me listen to this. So I was listening back to it again, and I was like, do you know what? The hidden gem on this album, or the track that I'd forgotten about, and now probably is my favorite, is Mutual Slump. Because when I hear Mutual Slump, those cymbals, if you hear it on a good system, it's explosive. And I was thinking, this guy could have done anything. It's actually really, he's got a lot of dexterity, as in, if you hear organ donor, it's almost like he could do a straight hard rap track almost. And then you hear like Mutual Slump and you're like, but what is this? This could be released today on Ninja Tune or something. Like, so this could easily be released today, and you'd be like,
and you would never think it's an old song.
And that lends itself to the legacy.
You know what? I agree with you. Mutual Slump is one that aged beautifully, like fine wine. Mutual Slump aged, and it's like it's funny because I kind of there's a really abrasive almost opening to Mutual Slump that and for a while it kind of would I would almost like want to skip it at the beginning, you know, before I kind of really knew the album, because I know what it turns into that abrasive is then you get that little Bjork sample. Ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
And when those cymbals start coming in and how I mean, just a world of cymbals. God, that's beautiful stuff, man.
Yeah.
I love talking about this.
Me too. I could tell. But do you know what that is? That moment of that abrasiveness going into beauty. You know who does that so much? And I've mentioned in Madlib. And not his beat packs, his beat tapes have these that for some reason that first that little weird distortion makes me think of him straight away, because he's done it on numerous occasions where it's almost like artists like him and Shadow are just kind of almost asking you not to join in. It's almost like
right. It's a challenge. It's a bit of a challenge.
Yes, they like to challenge you. That's it, and that's again brilliant, because that's what you need, I think, in art. So I
agree. When you absolutely need that in art, you need to be challenged, and these guys are challenging themselves and the art forms that they're in. I mean, you don't collect samples from all these from crate digging for 2-3 years, you know, unless you've got a real drive and something in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say is it building steam with a grain of salt? I don't know. I couldn't really think of what is the song that everyone talks about from this album, because I feel there's quite a few. But
it's this is kind of one of those albums that like the whole thing kind of speaks for itself. It really is. It's not like there's not a lot of singles you could pull off of it. I mean, if anything, it would be maybe like Midnight in a Perfect World and Organ Donor. Would probably be your 2 singles off there. But there's too much that's great. I mean, Building Steam with a Grain of Salt, or it's just fantastic. It's this chug along, that gets it going, but not in a typical like, hey, I'm a DJ that's going to wind you up kind of like thing. It's more of like, no, we're going to get into like a little darker, different kind of thing here.
Yeah. Drum and bass. There's some drum and bass in there.
Ooh,
there's these high keys, if I remember in that track. There's a guitar. There's so many things that make up. But then that also makes me think, like, with Shadow doing this with a few restrictions on his sampling, like De La Soul's happened almost 10 years. Well, not almost 8 years before this. And he must have had an idea of like sampling things that might be easy to clear. In my mind, I was always, imagine if sampling wasn't like, if it was assorted from jump, if people had sorted things, where could this genre have gone if it had got everything? Like, he's working with limited,
if it didn't have the restrictions, right?
Yeah, and this album is one of them where you feel he's reached for the stars, he's got there, and he's one man. Imagine if other people like Prince Paul, and like you talked about Paul's Boutique. That for me is such a brilliant double header. You could listen to this and Boutique, and you get this rounded feeling of the journey of rap. And I love Paul's Boutique. It's beautiful, man.
Oh yeah, no, me too. Paul's Boutique is unbelievable.
Yeah, the artwork alone. Oh, amazing. Man, on the artwork though, what did you think? What did you think to the artwork?
I love the cover of Endtroducing. I love it. You know what? And from what I understand, I think that a picture was taken at Rare Records, which is the record store that Shadow would go to. I think Joshua Davis is DJ Shadow's name, that he would go to and do all this crate digging at was Rare Records in Sacramento. And they went and they took that picture there. And I believe the guy, from what I think they're just a couple of customers there. Their faces are kind of blurred. I think one of them may be related to the label, the Moax label somewhere. But just the vibe of like this nameless, blurry,
guys wearing a wig,
through what you're going to find textures and all kinds of sounds and amazing little things that are just kind of faceless. You don't quite, that kind of speaks to the whole project.
Yeah, I was actually reading up on Brian Cross because he's the photographer for it. And apparently it's all about the focus of the cat. As in, they were trying to shift focus. So if you have the vine or if you have the leaflet, as you go out, obviously there's two guys, but there's a cat sitting there, and they're trying to get focus, and the cat's there, and that's
is that how that happens?
But it's one of the things that got into it. And I was like, oh right, okay, I didn't get that, and so again,
I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, me neither. So it was like that.
Wow.
And I think obviously the shutter and stuff like that. But then the remix album dropped. I remember the remix album dropped quite a bit after. Actually, it was like 10 years, maybe even. It was like a. I don't know. There's so many people on there. Hudson Mohawk and Clams Casino, people like that had remixed, and a lot of this that album introducing. And
by the way, have you ever heard the DJ Crush Miso Club mix of Midnight in a Perfect World?
No.
Got both the Roots MCs do a verse on it, one each.
Wow,
it's unbelievable. Club mix, DJ Crush, the Miso Club. I think Miso is the name of the EP, it's the club mix of Midnight in a Perfect World.
Wow,
you have got to hear this. Go find this after we're done.
Yeah, everyone go check that out. That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. There's so many variants, and stuff like that where you think this remix album was great, and on that cover, it's the same album cover, but he's straight, so you can see the guy with the wig and stuff. So. Yeah, it's just a really fascinating choice to pick that, but it's a really fascinating choice to call it Endtroducing, like
Endtroducing. Yeah, no, it's
ending an era and you're starting an era.
Starting an era. No, there's that dichotomy, those opposites, that black versus white. The polar peaks. That you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Do yeah. And one more I had to ask you about Number Song, because that's another one where.
Oh yeah,
I haven't heard that in a while, and yeah, just amazing to hear a track. In deep cuts, the album cuts that you kind of just forget, and now you have Spotify. You can make a playlist, and they go straight to the top, and then it almost becomes your favorite track. I love that, man.
Yeah, no, Number Song's a great one. It's a good one. There's so many good ones on this album. It's like there isn't a single one I would skip. Because I know there's. If there is one to skip, it's that even though it's a great little song, it's that little instrumental minute-long number that I think is titled "Why Hip Hop Sucks" in '96, which is a beautiful little song. And then you've got the little phrase said, "It's the money."
It's the money.
which you take from that what you will, but I'll tell you what, there was a lot of real good hip hop happening in '96.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of real good hip hop happening in '96, despite the title of that. So, and I'm sure he wasn't saying that quite that black and white, but you know.
Yeah. But I think that's, again, another era of this, like, where this album was at that time. I think there was certain movements in rap that have just solidified different things nowadays. And then it was so, like, the battle lines were drawn. You were like, if you don't like night, like I liked everything, but by the time I'd got into Raucous, I was full backpacker mode, burn your Puff Daddy CD situation. I was becoming like that, but but then you know what's interesting though? You talk about legacy, and obviously it's Radiohead, Tom. You're all these people that have come out from this album. I think even Cut Copy. I was watching some YouTube videos, and Cut Copy popped up on my DJ Shadow algorithm. And I've not heard Cut Copy in years. And like, they were just talking about the album, like, Endtroducing So's our favorite album. And it's like, wow, like, yeah, it still has a real.
That's funny too, because I was just reading about the Tom York, him talking about how he got so inspired from Endtroducing to start doing the cut and paste kind of approach to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and like Burial and Fortet and people like that now.
Yeah, Burial.
Yeah. We could do
sorry. I actually had Burial. I was playing Burial for my son about a week ago.
Wow.
I took out he was, for some reason, my son thinks that anytime he hears any electronic music, he thinks it's dubstep. I don't know why. I don't know in what world, like, the term dubstep became the term for all electronic music amongst the youngsters around me. I don't know why, but like, no. Let me play you dubstep.
Yeah.
Like real dubstep. I'll play you dubstep, you know, and then I put on that for Burial record. I'm like, here's like one of the Godfathers. All right.
Untrue. Oh man, Sean, we are going to get along famously. I did, like now that, but because I think it's been an ongoing joke on this podcast that I basically bring up Burial a lot, but I think it's rightly so. He is our Neo. He is our Neo in the Matrix, is what I call him.
Yes. Oh yes.
But that's interesting though. You said that about dubstep, just to sidetrack again. But I think in any conversation about hip hop, if you're going to sidetrack into these other realms, DJ Shadow's Endtroducing is the album that does it itself. So you can't help but talk about people like Burial and Ninja Tune and Fortet and people like that. And there is a documentary for anyone who's into dubstep or what they feel dubstep is, and how it became what your son now perceives it as compared to probably what me and you perceive it as. There is an absolutely excellent documentary on YouTube, and it's just the history of dubstep. And I can't actually remember, it's just this guy, YouTuber, who's made it, who loves Burial and all that and hated Skrillex. And he kind of really breaks down how they got to Skrillex from Burial and before Burial, you know, like, I can't, the names escape me, but like Code 9, people like that. Like, basically.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like Hyperdub and the Tectonic labels.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that doc, if you like a music doc, man, you should jump in on YouTube. And
I gotta jump. I'm so bad about the music. You know, I'm like, for such a music nerd, there's so many music docs I need to see.
I know. That's because you like everything as well. It's not even like you like one genre; you should like everything. But I was saying it's quite nice to see that legacy is there from these artists who are making it. But you know what else it reminded me of? Listen to this. A lot of younger people that I work with end up, they call it chill wave, but it's almost like YouTube mixes. Like people, I don't know if you've ever got into this world, but it's like, it's people who just put really chilled out hip hop onto YouTube videos for like 3 hours and people just work to them. And
oh yeah, these loops and stuff. Like people have looped together. That's funny because again, bring up Aphex Twin. There's this great track, like 12-minute track, ambient track he made called Stone and Focus many, many years ago. And tons of people out there on YouTube, you can find 100 million of them, have looped this song and made hours and hours of, so you can just listen to it on a loop. So I kind of get that. And it's, I think of like producers like Clams Casino or something, and you can hear some of that dreamy hip hop, cloud hip hop, you know, kind of thing, and live on that for a couple hours. I could see that. Yeah.
You talk about cloud, there's some real blissed out. You can tell people have been smoking all day. Like to tracks on here where you're like, there are just some really blissed out tracks where you're like, oh, you have to be doing some mind-altered state situation here, because
to be responsible for this,
to be responsible for doing. How have you even thought of these things? But yeah, right. No, absolutely brilliant, man. Sean, this has been absolutely amazing talking to you about this album. But
same.
I did want to jump in. Yeah, I did want to jump in a little bit with your career though, and just kind of seeing the world you're in and where hip hop lives in that. So you're an actor. You've been acting for a large part of your career. Congratulations on that alone. I know a lot of actors, it's a hard job.
Right.
So
it's a gig. It's funny, people like right now, for the last 18 years, I've been doing a show called NCIS, a 1 hour, show, and people don't realize, how much work you put into a 1 hour show. It's, 5, sometimes 6 days a week. You're up and out the door at 6 a.m. You're coming home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You got 12 hours to go to. But anyway, one of the things that became a thing over the years is because you would start work so early in the morning, 6:30, 7 a.m. And you'd be like, not like you're making a cup of coffee at 6:30 and kind of slowly rolling, like you're up rehearsing, blocking scenes, doing stuff like that. And one of the things that I was doing for years, and it took me years to realize it, I was warming up vocally and kind of getting in a performance mode a little bit, because on my whole ride to work, I have a 25-mile ride to work.
Right. Not
in traffic, but I got a half hour on work, and every ride is hip hop, and every ride is usually a lot of pretty intricate lyrics. And I'm just going with it. You'll hear me play a lot of Earl Sweatshirt on my way to work. Earl Sweatshirt's one of my favorites of all time.
Okay. Wow.
And so I kind of realized after a while, you know what? I was warming myself up kind of vocally almost to perform just by almost like exercises, rapping along with my bloody, CDs in my car or, MP3s, whatever.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I did not think we'd find acting, NCIS, Earl Sweatshirt kind of triangle, but we have. And I feel like my work is done. That's it now.
Somehow it's come together okay.
Exactly. That's amazing. But I was actually going to ask you really where hip hop plays in your life and how it goes down on set, or with your other actors and people in your basic peers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm known to, all my friends know me as the big music nerd, the one that listens to everything from, Tom Petty to Young Thug.
Yeah.
So,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, so I'm always playing stuff. Actually, Wilmer Valderrama is on the show with me. I'm constantly playing him. I'm always finding cool new trap stuff. And wow. I actually love a lot of the stuff that the 808 Mafia guys have been producing for years now, Southside and especially Murder Beats right. and TM88. These guys are amazing, but right. I'm frequently playing a lot of the new stuff that I find for Wilmer, and Wilmer knows I'm the requisite, hip hop guy or just music guy in general. So whenever has questions about music, he's like, talk to Sean.
Oh, that's amazing. Is there any surprising hip hop heads in that universe where we'd be maybe like, oh, hold on, didn't know they were into rap?
You know what? One of our head writers, I'm not going to say who, but one of our head writers who you would never guess in a million years is one of the most hardcore hip hop heads of all time. He knows every word ever uttered by Lil Wayne. I know that. I don't, but he does.
Wow. That's a lot of words. That is
no, I know that much. I know. But yeah, so we've got a couple hip hop heads around the NCIS.
Man. Yeah. Okay. Everyone talks about The Wire. Everyone talks about Snowfall. Actually, NCIS also underlying hip hop attitude. I love it. I love that.
Yeah, we're it's maybe some way we can make an episode about that. Someone would do something.
Yeah, you never know, man. You never know.
It'd be fun.
So you talking that you had kids as well, obviously. How are they in the hip hop realm? You sound a bit like me, if I'm being honest, into lots of different genres and passionately into them. How is that with your parenting? Are you kind of nudging them into areas?
It's funny because obviously with a lot of hip hop, especially a lot of the current stuff, there's a lot I can't really play around my kids.
For sure, for sure. Yeah.
Excuse me. And but I am totally enjoying, my daughter, her world is musical theater.
Right.
So everything is musicals for her. So, and that actually is kind of some of the little bit of music related stuff that I don't know about, even though I'm an actor. Musical theater is not like my scene.
Yeah.
So she's kind of gotten me a little bit into that. And I take her to, what's great is right now I'm on hiatus. So, and they're still doing schooling, a little in-person schooling. So I've been able to, play chauffeur a little bit to the kids and stuff. And they know that when they're in the car with daddy, the daddy's going to be playing some kind of music, going to be talking about the music, giving them some sort of history lesson on it, So it's funny. Like I definitely, like my son has his opinion. My son's 11. His name's River. My boy, he's got his opinions. I was actually playing some Metallica yesterday out loud, and he goes, "I don't like heavy metal." And that was the first time I heard him say that. And then it's funny though, but he actually likes when I play the rap stuff. He doesn't know the different, he doesn't know the artists and stuff. He doesn't follow that. Okay. And my daughter, like I said, Caitlin, her whole world is musical theater. So if it's not part of a play, like she doesn't want to know it.
But they might get to that age. They might get to age 16, 17, 18.
Oh, when they get there, I know how that happens. Yeah. It happened to me and I never went back. Music.
Yeah.
It changes you.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% it does. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, by the way, talking about samples, how about in introducing this just popped in my head, the Metallica sample of Orion. Do you remember that he samples the Orion, which is, Orion, the instrumental from Master of Puppets?
Yeah, Master of Puppets. Yes.
That slow, distorted bass burn-in, that's sampled in introducing. I forget the track, but it's there and it works so perfect.
Damn. Look where he was going.
Most things.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. See, this again, it makes an album like this, it doesn't just make you want to listen to like Dilla's Donuts and whatever. It makes you also want to go like, I want to watch a Lynch film, I want to listen to some Metallica. And I think that, again, just going back to my initial point about how this took hip-hop to a place where, like you just said, that Earl sweatshirt, right? Today, I don't know if many people around me love Earl as much as I love Earl, but then when I hear him on something on new on The Alchemist, it's like, like this is how far we've gotten. And I think things like milestones like Introducing pushed the boundaries to the point now where my friends don't even listen to Earl, but he has such a world of fandom around him. In the 90s, you couldn't find that. Everything crossed over, everything. If you love Tribe, you'd probably love Gangstar. And if you love Gangstar, you'd probably love those guys. And I feel that as it's got further and further apart, you have these different worlds. And yeah, it's fascinating. Because some of them acts you were telling me about, I've not really heard their music, but I listen to a lot of rap. So it's interesting that, there's still these worlds to explore. And yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, there's always someone pushing it somewhere. Like there's never, even when you think there's someone, I can't listen to any more crap. There's someone that's pushing it in some awesome new direction.
Yes.
And there's going to be a group of people doing it and they're going to find something special. It's happened since music has always been around.
Absolutely. And
it's an artistry that's like unbelievable. I mean, it's just a beautiful blank canvas. And some of these guys, what they can do, some of these men and women, unbelievable.
Crazy.
Introducing is the perfect example of that. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, sure, absolutely no. But on that, like you've just said, it wraps it up really nicely because you were saying there about like the track. If you my question I always ask everyone at the end is basically, what's the last great piece of music you heard? And it could be old, it could be new, but do you have one where you were like, oh, that's the last great piece I think I heard?
Ooh, that's hard. You know what? Recently, and I was kind of slow to get on this, oddly enough. I kind of only recently got on the Barter 6 Young Thug, his debut album.
Right, okay.
There is some stuff going on in those. I think there's only like 8 or 9 tracks. There's not a lot of tracks, but there's stuff going on in that album that is like unbelievably good.
Really?
Like unbelievably good.
Okay.
Oh, so good. Barter 6, his debut album. Very special. And I know it's a couple years old at this point, but now everything's a couple years old at this point. So what are you going to do? Exactly.
I like
now in 2018 is a couple years old. So what are you going to do?
Because there's so much music now. I like going back to something that's only about a year or two old. And it's like, like, I don't know. There's so many albums I listen to now and on the shuffle, bang, you hear one of them tracks about 2017, 2016. You're like, God,
Right.
yeah, I completely missed this because there's been so much. It's hard to really sit with something. And again, Introducing was that, like you sat with this album, like on your journeys, on your commutes, or when you were studying or whatever. Another good thing about the no lyrics thing is because you could do a lot of things to this, like read a book.
Right. It was almost like a study. Some people could study to it if they wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to it or whatever.
Yeah. And just before I forget, that other thing I thought when I heard this back was like, how many DJs were just doing DJ albums? Because I can't remember many. Like,
right. No, you're absolutely correct.
Like they were like DJs.
I mean, so I think for someone that labels them, I agree with you. For someone that labels himself a DJ, I mean, they really went out on something, a special kind of tip to go do that, because that is very outside your usual kind of DJ format.
Yeah. Yeah. Like no artists, no features, nothing. I'm just going to do it. So, yeah, it's really weird.
You're going to build this thing out of all these obscure pieces. And
yeah.
I think literally the Metallica sample and the little Bjork sample are the two most famous, probably little things that you could recognize, you know, from somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's probably about it on that album.
Yeah. And even then, you don't, like me. I didn't even do it. Like, oh yeah, sometimes you
because it envelops in the rest of it so beautifully. You know, he doesn't just take someone else's thing and puts it up. He makes it a beautiful piece.
Yeah, it's transformative. It makes it completely new.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, yeah, man. Look, we're like quicksand. We're trying to get away from the album, and it just pulls you back in because it's that good. Because it's that good.
That's right.
But yeah, man. Thank you, Sean, for coming on, man. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, no, I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
No, man. The passion, the love is real, and yeah, I look forward to the next thing you're doing. And man, the door's always open, man. If you ever want to just feel like chatting this again, we've got a Patreon coming up, so I'm going to be pretty much on this mic every week, just talking to people. So yeah, so if you're ever about, man, definitely give us a shout.
I appreciate that offer very much. I do. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Nah, wicked, man. Peace, bro.
All right, take care, bro.